The apex predators. What makes a species alpha in the galaxy? Size, strength, intelligence? The Zephyrians had it all, or so they thought. Deep in the Andromeda sector, where 3 star systems meet like fingers of a cosmic hand, there lived a species that ruled everything they could see. The Zephyrians stood 12 feet tall, with muscles like steel cables and minds sharp enough to split atoms with pure thought. Their skin was black as space itself, dotted with silver patterns that glowed when they were angry, which was often. For over 10,000 years, the Zephyrians had been the undisputed masters of their corner of the galaxy. They didn't just conquer worlds, they collected them like trophies. Every planet in their empire bore the same story. First came the massive black ships, blotting out the sun. Then came the Zephyrian warriors, each one capable of crushing a building with their bare hands. Finally came the surrender, always the surrender. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of the dominant Alpha, the flagship of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. His silver markings pulsed with satisfaction as he reviewed the reports from their latest conquest. The Kalari had lasted 3 days, longer than most, but still pathetic. Their crystal cities now lay in ruins, their people working in the mining colonies, their children learning Zephyrian history in school. Another species added to the collection. Vextar rumbled to his second-in-command, Krelpos. How many does that make now? 473, Commander. Krelpos replied, his voice filled with pride. The largest empire in known space. But as Vextar looked out at the stars, something nagged at him. His scouts had been bringing strange reports lately, ships that moved in ways that defied physics, planets that went dark without explanation, and strangest of all, whispers of a new species, one that fought back. Sir, a young warrior at the communication station called out. We're receiving a transmission from Scout Fleet Delta. Put it through, Vextar commanded. The hologram that appeared was barely recognizable as Zephyrian. Scout Captain Mordex was missing half his face, his once proud silver markings dim and flickering. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was a wreck of twisted metal and sparking electronics. Commander, Mordex gasped. The humans. They're not what we expected. Vextar's markings flared bright silver. Explain yourself, Captain. What are these humans? Small, soft, weak-looking creatures, sir. We thought they'd surrender like all the others. But when we sent the invasion force to their 3rd planet... Mordex paused, his remaining eye wide with something Vextar had never seen in a Zephyrian before. Fear. They didn't just fight back, sir. They won. The bridge fell silent. In 10,000 years of conquest, the Zephyrians had never faced true defeat. Some species fought longer than others, but they all fell eventually. The idea that these humans had actually won against Zephyrian forces was impossible. How many ships did you lose? Vextar asked quietly. All of them, sir. 37 battle cruisers gone. The humans, they don't fight like anything we've seen. They're small, yes, but they're fast. And smart, and... Mordex's voice dropped to a whisper. They're angry. As if summoned by the mention of their name, alarms began blaring throughout the dominant Alpha. The ship's tactical officer spun around, his markings blazing with alarm. Commander, unknown ships dropping out of hyperspace. Configuration unknown, but they're moving fast. Vextar strode to the main view screen, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. What he saw made his blood run cold. The ships were tiny compared to Zephyrian vessels, but there were hundreds of them. They moved like a school of deadly fish, weaving through space in impossible patterns. Then came the transmission. It was in a language the Zephyrians had never heard, but the universal translator made quick work of it. The voice was higher than a Zephyrian's, almost musical. But there was steel underneath the melody. Attention, Zephyrian fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation. You have invaded human space and attacked our colonies. We're here to discuss terms. Vextar laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Terms. Little human, do you know who you're talking to? I am Vextar, commander of the Imperial Fleet, conqueror of worlds, alpha of alphas. There was a pause. Then the human voice came back, and now there was something new in it. Amusement. Alpha? That's cute. Let me show you what a real predator looks like. First contact. The Zephyrians had conquered 473 species, but they had never met anything quite like humanity. The human fleet spread out like a net around the Zephyrian ships, each vessel moving with precision that bordered on the supernatural. Vextar had seen many battle formations in his centuries of conquest, but nothing like this. The humans moved as if they shared one mind, yet each ship took independent action when needed. Tactical analysis. Vextar barked. His weapons officer, Grimlock, studied the displays with growing confusion. "Sir, their ships are roughly 1/10 our size, with weapons that appear to be projectile-based. Primitive technology, but their coordination is unlike anything in our databases. Numbers? Approximately 300 vessels against our 50. However, our shields and armor should easily withstand their primitive weapons." Vextar nodded. It was true that the humans outnumbered them, but Zephyrian ships were built like flying fortresses. Each one could take on 10 enemy vessels and emerge victorious. The math was simple. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the comm again. "Commander Vextar, I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw from human space. Take your ships and leave. This is your only warning." The Zephyrian bridge erupted in laughter. The idea that these tiny creatures would threaten them was beyond absurd. Vextar stepped forward, his markings blazing with contempt. "Little human, I have conquered worlds since before your species learned to make fire. I have crushed civilizations that spanned star systems. What makes you think your pathetic fleet can stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire?" The response came immediately, and it chilled every Zephyrian on the bridge to their core. "Because we've been watching you for 50 years, Vextar. We know how you fight, how you think, how you die. We've studied every battle, analyzed every tactic, prepared for every strategy. You see, unlike every other species you've faced, we had time to get ready, and humans, Commander, are very good at preparing for war." Before Vextar could respond, the human fleet moved. It wasn't like any attack pattern the Zephyrians had ever seen. Instead of the standard frontal assault or pincer movement, the human ships suddenly scattered in all directions, then reformed into smaller groups that began harassing the Zephyrian fleet from multiple angles. "Evasive maneuvers," Vextar commanded. "Return fire!" The massive Zephyrian ships began to turn, their powerful engines pushing them through space like floating mountains. But the humans were already gone, dancing away from their firing solutions like leaves in a hurricane. Grimlock fired the main batteries, sending bolts of superheated plasma toward the human ships. The shots should have vaporized anything they touched, but the humans seemed to know where each blast was going before it was fired. They slipped through the barrage like ghosts, then the humans fired back. The projectiles that streaked toward the Zephyrian ships looked almost primitive. Simple metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. Grimlock laughed as they approached. "Their weapons can't penetrate our shields," he declared confidently. The first volley hit the dominant Alpha's shields and bounced off harmlessly. The second volley did the same, but as Vextar watched, something impossible happened. The human ships weren't trying to break through the shields. They were learning from them. Each shot was slightly different from the last. Different velocity, different angle, different composition. The humans were experimenting, adapting, evolving their attack in real time. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, his voice tight with worry. "They're modifying their ammunition between shots. Each projectile is designed to exploit weaknesses in our shield harmonics." "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "No species adapts that quickly in combat." But even as he spoke, the human projectiles began to penetrate the shields, not breaking them, but slipping through like needles, finding gaps in armor. The hits were precise, surgical, targeting specific systems with devastating accuracy. The lights on the bridge flickered as one of the human rounds found the secondary power coupling. Another shot disabled the starboard weapon array. A third took out the navigation sensors. "How are they doing this?" Vextar demanded. His science officer, Delmar, looked up from his console with disbelief written across his features. "Sir, they're using our own tactics against us, but faster. Each human ship is sharing targeting data with the others instantaneously. They're not just adapting, they're evolving mid-battle." Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm again, and now there was something predatory in it. "You know what the difference is between you and us, Commander? You conquered 473 species that couldn't fight back effectively. But humans, we've been fighting each other for our entire history. We've had thousands of years to perfect the art of war, and now we have a common enemy. As if to emphasize her point, the human fleet suddenly changed tactics again. This time, instead of hit-and-run attacks, they formed into a tight formation and punched straight through the center of the Zephyrian line. But it wasn't a charge. It was something far more clever. Each human ship released a cloud of smaller objects as they passed through. At first, Vextar thought they were escape pods or debris. Then the explosions began. The debris were actually sophisticated mines, each one programmed to attach to Zephyrian ships and analyze their hull composition before detonating with precisely the right frequency to cause maximum damage. Within minutes, half the Zephyrian fleet was crippled. "Sir," the communications officer shouted, "we're receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans aren't just attacking our ships, they're hacking our systems, disrupting our communications, even turning our own weapons against each other." Vextar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. This wasn't a battle, it was a dissection. The humans were taking apart his fleet piece by piece, learning and adapting with every passing moment. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships retreat to hyperspace." But as the Zephyrian ships began to orient for jump, they discovered the humans' final surprise. The space around them was filled with some kind of interference field. Their hyperdrives couldn't lock onto a destination. Admiral Chen's laughter echoed across the comm channel. "Did you really think we'd let you run away to gather reinforcements? No, Commander. This ends here, today." The humans reveal their true nature. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species it had never heard of. In the depths of space, far from the battle raging between human and Zephyrian fleets, an emergency meeting was taking place aboard the Galactic Council Station Harmony. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to discuss the impossible reports coming in from the Outer Rim. Chairman Velthara, a tall, graceful being from the peaceful Luminari species, called the session to order with obvious distress. Her usually calm blue skin was flickering with nervous energy. "Fellow beings," she began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, "we have received disturbing reports from the Zephyrian sector. It appears that a new species has not only resisted Zephyrian conquest, but is actively defeating their fleets." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. The reptilian Skatar delegate stood up, his scales rattling with agitation. "Impossible. The Zephyrians are the apex predators of the galaxy. Their empire spans thousands of worlds. Nevertheless," Velthara continued, "our deep space monitors have confirmed it. The species calls itself humanity. Oh, and they appear to have capabilities we've never encountered before." Ambassador Quintel of the scholarly Archivans activated a holographic display showing the battle footage their sensors had captured. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as tiny human ships danced around massive Zephyrian vessels, striking with surgical precision. "Notice the coordination," Quintel pointed out. "Each human vessel acts independently yet remains perfectly synchronized with the fleet. Their adaptation rate is beyond anything in our records." Meanwhile, back in the battle zone, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution. Around her, the command crew worked with quiet efficiency that would have impressed even the Zephyrians if they could have understood what they were seeing. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Kim, "the Zephyrian fleet is down to 37 operational vessels. They're attempting to form a defensive sphere." Chen nodded, studying the tactical display. Each Zephyrian ship was marked with detailed information. Crew complement, weapon capabilities, known weak points, even psychological profiles of their commanders. The humans had been preparing for this confrontation for decades. "Time to show them what humans really are," Chen said quietly. "Initiate Protocol 7. Across the human fleet, a transformation began. The sleek ships that had been dancing around the Zephyrians suddenly began to change, their hulls reconfiguring in ways that should have been impossible. Armor plates slid aside to reveal weapons that hadn't been there moments before. Engine pods rotated to new positions. Entire sections of the ships seemed to rebuild themselves. Commander Vextar watched this transformation with growing dread. "What are they doing?" he whispered. His science officer Delmar was frantically running scans. "Sir, the human ships? They're not just technological. There are biological components integrated throughout their structure. It's as if their vessels are alive." The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than Delmar could have imagined. The human ships weren't alive. They were extensions of the humans themselves. Through neural interface technology perfected over centuries of warfare, each human pilot was directly connected to their vessel. They didn't just fly their ships. They became them. Admiral Chen felt her consciousness expand as the link deepened. Through the quantum entanglement network, she was simultaneously aware of every human ship, every weapon, every tactical situation. It was like having 300 bodies and 300 minds all working in perfect harmony. "This is what it means to be human," she transmitted to Vextar on all frequencies. "We don't just use tools, we become them. We don't just adapt to our environment, we transform it. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every enemy teaches us something new." The human fleet's attack pattern changed completely. Instead of individual ships fighting alone, they moved like a single organism. Some vessels provided sensor data, while others delivered precisely targeted strikes. Ships that had been damaged instantly received support from their neighbors, sharing power, ammunition, even crew members through teleportation technology. But the most terrifying aspect wasn't their technology. It was their psychology. As the battle progressed, the humans weren't just defeating the Zephyrians. They were studying them, learning everything about Zephyrian society, culture, and military doctrine from their combat behavior. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the fleet's xenopsychologist, sat at a specialized console surrounded by streams of data. She wasn't just analyzing Zephyrian tactics, she was mapping their entire civilization through the way they fought. "Admiral," she reported, "I've identified 17 distinct military traditions in their fleet formations, traced their command structure hierarchy, and even pinpointed likely homeworld locations based on their unit organization patterns." This was the human advantage that no other species possessed. Humans didn't just defeat their enemies, they understood them completely. Every battle was also a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation. Vextar, realizing his fleet was being systematically dismantled, made a desperate decision. "All ships ramming speed. We'll take as many of them with us as we can." The remaining Zephyrian vessels surged forward in a final, desperate charge. Their massive hulks should have overwhelmed the smaller human ships through sheer momentum and mass. But the humans had anticipated this too. Instead of fleeing or meeting the charge head-on, the human fleet simply disappeared. One moment they were there, the next they had vanished from all senses. The Zephyrians found themselves charging through empty space, cloaking technology. Delmar wondered aloud. No, Admiral Chen's voice came from everywhere at once, as if space itself was speaking. "We're still here. You just can't perceive us anymore." The humans had done something impossible. They had shifted their ships into a higher dimensional space, one where they could observe and act upon the three-dimensional battlefield while remaining undetectable to conventional sensors. From this higher dimension, the human fleet struck with devastating precision. Energy beams that seemed to come from nowhere began disabling Zephyrian ships one by one. But they weren't destroying them, they were capturing them intact. "What do you want?" Vextar screamed into his communicator as his flagship's systems began shutting down around him. Admiral Chen's voice was calm, almost gentle when she replied. "We want what every species wants, Commander. To survive, to grow, to explore. The difference is, we're willing to fight for it, and we're very, very good at fighting." As the dominant Alpha's life support systems began to fail, Vextar realized he was looking at something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a species that could defeat the Zephyrians, but one that could do it while barely breaking a sweat. "You're not just another species," he gasped. "You're something new." "No," Chen replied. "We're something very, very old. We're what happens when a species spends its entire evolutionary history learning to survive in a galaxy that's trying to kill it. Welcome to humanity, Commander. We hope you survive the experience." The true war begins. The Zephyrians thought they were the apex predators. They were wrong, but they were about to learn what real predators look like when humans decide to hunt. 3 months after the first battle, the Zephyrian High Command sat in emergency session deep beneath the surface of their homeworld, Zephyr Prime. The massive chamber, carved from black volcanic rock and decorated with the skulls of conquered species, had never seen such desperation. Supreme Commander Krex Thule, eldest and most decorated warrior of the Empire, stood before a holographic display showing the current state of their territory. What he saw made his ancient heart pound with something he hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. "Report," he commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. General Morgax stepped forward, her silver markings dim with shame. "Supreme Commander, we have lost contact with 17 sector fleets. 43 colonized worlds have gone dark. The humans are not just attacking our military forces, they're dismantling our entire empire." "How is this possible?" demanded War Chief Vex Khan. "They are a single species. We have conquered hundreds." The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Zilthara, the Empire's chief xenobiologist, rose from her seat in the scientific section. She was smaller than the warriors, her markings more silver than black, and she was trembling. "Because we never understood what we were fighting," she said quietly. "I've been analyzing the human combat footage for weeks. These beings, they're not just another species. There's something unprecedented." She activated a new hologram showing human evolutionary history. "Look at their homeworld data. Sol 3, which they call Earth, is classified as a death world by galactic standards. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, natural disasters that would wipe out most civilizations. But instead of finding a safe planet, humans evolved on this nightmare world." The assembled Zephyrians watched in growing horror as the display showed Earth's history. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions. Through it all, the human evolutionary line survived, adapted, grew stronger. "They didn't just survive their environment," Dr. Zilthara continued. "They conquered it, but more importantly, they spent their entire pre-spaceflight history fighting each other. While we were conquering peaceful species, humans were perfecting warfare against opponents exactly as intelligent and adaptable as themselves." Supreme Commander Krex Thule studied the data with the mind of a veteran strategist. What he saw chilled him to his core. Human history was an unbroken chain of conflict, innovation, and adaptation. They had developed technologies of war that the Zephyrians couldn't even comprehend. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Dalmex, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Krex Thule ordered. Admiral Chen appeared in the center of the chamber, her small human form somehow commanding attention from every massive Zephyrian present. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed humans working with calm efficiency. "Supreme Commander Krex Thule," she said, and the fact that she knew his name and title made his markings flicker with unease. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation. We need to talk. You dare enter our sacred command chamber with your image?" Krex Thule snarled. "We do not negotiate with prey species." Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. "Prey species? Commander, in the past 3 months we've captured or destroyed over 200 of your ships, liberated 43 worlds, and freed approximately 30 million enslaved beings. If anyone is prey here, it's not us." She gestured, and the hologram expanded to show a real-time tactical display of the Zephyrian Empire. Krex Thule's heart nearly stopped. Human forces were everywhere, not just on the borders, but deep within Zephyrian territory, striking at will and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. "How?" he whispered. "Because we don't fight fair," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "Fairness is a luxury for species that don't have to worry about extinction. Humans learned long ago that the only rule in war is to win." General Morgax stepped forward, her warrior pride overcoming her caution. "What do you want, human?" "Simple," Chen said. "The unconditional surrender of the Zephyrian Empire, the immediate release of all enslaved populations, and the dismantling of your military forces." The chamber erupted in roars of outrage, but Chen continued speaking as if she hadn't heard them. In return, we'll allow your species to survive. You can keep your homeworld and enough territory to maintain your population. You'll be under human oversight, but you'll be alive. Supreme Commander Krexthul forced himself to think strategically despite his rage. And if we refuse? Chen's expression didn't change, but something cold entered her voice. Then we'll do what humans have always done when faced with an existential threat. We'll innovate. The hologram changed again, this time showing something that made even the most battle-hardened Zephyrian warriors step back in terror. It was a star system that had once been home to a minor Zephyrian outpost. Now it was gone, not destroyed, but gone. Where planets should have been, there was only empty space. "What did you do?" Dr. Zilthara whispered. "We asked ourselves a simple question," Chen explained calmly. "If we can shift matter into higher dimensional space, what happens if we shift something really big? Like, say, an entire solar system?" The implications hit the Zephyrians like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just defeated their forces, they had developed the ability to erase entire star systems from reality. "You're bluffing," General Morgak said. But her voice lacked conviction. "Are we?" Chen asked. "Would you like to find out? We have the coordinates of every Zephyrian world, every military base, every population center. It would take us approximately 72 hours to erase your entire civilization from the universe." War Chief Vexcon snarled and stepped forward. "You cannot threaten the entire Zephyrian race." "The Galactic Council will what?" Chen interrupted. "The Galactic Council is terrified of us. Half their member species are former victims of Zephyrian conquest who are cheering us on. The other half are trying to figure out if they should surrender preemptively." She was right, and they all knew it. Reports had been coming in from across the galaxy. Species that had cowered before Zephyrian might for millennia were suddenly finding courage. Some were openly rebelling against their Zephyrian overlords. Others were reaching out to the humans, offering alliance and support. "But here's what you don't understand about humans," Chen continued. "We don't want to rule the galaxy. We've seen what happens when one species tries to dominate all others. It breeds stagnation, cruelty, and eventually collapse. We want something much more dangerous than empire." "What?" Krexthul asked, though he dreaded the answer. "We want evolution," Chen said. "We want every species to reach its full potential, to contribute something unique to galactic civilization. We want diversity, creativity, growth. The Zephyrians could have been part of that. You could have been the galaxy's warriors, protectors instead of conquerors." Supreme Commander Krexthul felt something he had never experienced before. The weight of an entire civilization's mistakes pressing down on him. For 10,000 years, the Zephyrians had believed that might made right, that strength justified conquest. Now they faced a species that was stronger than them in every way that mattered. "You have 24 hours to decide," Chen concluded. "Surrender and join the new galactic community as equals, or face extinction. The choice is yours." The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian High Command in stunned silence. They had spent their entire civilization being the monsters that other species had nightmares about. Now they were learning what it felt like to be afraid. Supreme Commander Krexthul looked around at his fellow leaders and saw his own fear reflected in their faces. For the first time in Zephyrian history, they weren't the apex predators. They were prey. The new galactic order. When the dust settled and the last shot was fired, the galaxy learned that humans had never wanted to rule. They wanted something far more revolutionary. 1 year later, the Galactic Council chamber on Station Harmony looked very different than it had before the Human-Zephyrian War. The circular assembly hall had been expanded to accommodate dozens of new species, former slaves and overlooked civilizations that were now taking their place as equals in galactic society. Admiral Chen, now bearing the title of Terran Federation Ambassador, stood at the central podium addressing the largest gathering of sentient species in galactic history. Her small human form seemed insignificant compared to the towering beings around her, but everyone in the chamber hung on her every word. "Today marks the first anniversary of the Zephyrian Empire's surrender," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "But more importantly, it marks the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. a truly cooperative civilization. In the section reserved for former Zephyrian leadership, Supreme Commander Krexthul sat quietly. The once proud warrior looked diminished, his silver markings dulled by the weight of his species' transformation. Beside him sat Dr. Zilthara, who had become the primary Zephyrian liaison to the new galactic community. Chen continued, "The humans could have done what the Zephyrians did, conquered, enslaved, ruled through fear. But we learned something from our own bloody history. Empires built on oppression always fall. Always. The only sustainable civilization is one where every member contributes their unique strengths." She gestured to the assembled delegates. "Look around this chamber. The Luminari bring us art and philosophy that expands our understanding of beauty. The Archivans preserve knowledge and wisdom from across the galaxy. The Kalari create technologies that seem like magic. Even the former Zephyrian military has found a new purpose, protecting the weak and exploring dangerous regions of space." It was true. In the year since the surrender, the transformation had been remarkable. The Zephyrians, stripped of their empire but not their warrior nature, had been integrated into the new Galactic Defense Force. Their strength and courage, once used for conquest, now served to protect peaceful species from natural disasters and the few remaining pirates and raiders in the galaxy. Commander Vextar, the former leader of the dominant Alpha, now served as a senior officer in the GDF. The human military advisors had been surprised to discover that Zephyrians, once freed from the burden of maintaining an empire through fear, were actually quite noble. Their warrior code had always emphasized honor and protection of the weak. They had simply forgotten it over millennia of easy conquests. "But the real revolution isn't military or political," Chen continued. "It's philosophical. For the first time in galactic history, we have a civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. Every species contributes what they do best, and everyone benefits." In the scientific section, Dr. Elizabeth Harper, now head of the Interspecies Research Initiative, smiled as she listened to the Admiral's speech. The past year had been the most productive in galactic scientific history. Human adaptability combined with Archivan knowledge, Luminari creativity, and even Zephyrian physical strength had produced breakthroughs that no single species could have achieved alone. They had developed faster-than-light communication, networks that connected every world in the galaxy, medical technologies that could cure diseases across species barriers, even the beginning stages of dimensional engineering that might someday allow them to create new habitable worlds rather than fighting over existing ones. "The old way was simple," Chen said, her voice growing more serious. "One species dominates, others serve. But simple solutions rarely work for complex problems. The galaxy is vast, full of dangers and opportunities that require every possible perspective, every unique strength." She paused, looking directly at the Zephyrian delegation. The Zephyrians weren't evil. They were trapped in an old pattern, one that many species have fallen into throughout history. The strong dominate the weak, but humans learn something different. We learn that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. Supreme Commander Krexthul stood slowly, his massive frame drawing attention from across the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of genuine regret. "Ambassador Chen speaks truth. My species spent 10,000 years believing that might made right. We conquered because we could, enslaved because it was easy, ruled through fear because it seemed efficient." He paused, his silver markings flickering with shame. "We were strong, but we were not wise." He turned to address the full assembly. "The humans showed us something we had forgotten. True strength protects, it does not exploit. True power builds up, it does not tear down. My people offer our service to this new galactic civilization, not as conquerors, but as protectors." The chamber erupted in applause, but Chen raised her hand for silence. She wasn't finished. "There's something else you all need to understand about humans," she said. And there was something almost sad in her voice. "We didn't become what we are by choice. Earth, our homeworld, is a death trap. Everything there evolved to kill everything else. We became adaptable because we had to. We became innovative because innovation meant survival. We became warriors because the alternative was extinction. She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of species represented there. Most of you come from peaceful worlds, stable environments where cooperation was natural. You developed art, philosophy, science in ways that we never could because you didn't spend every moment of your existence fighting just to survive. Dr. Zilthara stood up in the scientific section. But that's what makes this partnership so powerful. Humans bring the innovation and determination that comes from surviving impossible odds. We bring the wisdom and creativity that comes from peaceful development. Together, we're stronger than any of us could be alone. Chen nodded gratefully. Exactly. This isn't human dominance disguised as cooperation. This is genuine evolution, not biological, but civilizational. We're becoming something new, something that combines the best of every species. In the observer section, representatives from dozens of minor species watched in wonder. For the first time in their history, they had voices in galactic affairs. The Tinytel, whose homeworld was barely larger than an asteroid, served as master engineers for deep space construction. The Whisper clan, whose natural telepathy had made them targets for exploitation, now served as counselors and mediators. But there are challenges ahead, Chen warned. The galaxy is vast, and we've barely scratched the surface of what's out there. There are hostile species in the galactic rim that make the old Zephyrian Empire look friendly. There are cosmic phenomena that could wipe out entire civilizations. There are mysteries that will require every one of our combined intelligences to solve. She smiled, and for a moment her expression was purely human, determined, optimistic, ready for whatever challenge came next. But that's okay. Humans have been facing impossible odds since we first looked up at the stars and decided we belonged there too. And now, we're not facing those challenges alone. We have the wisdom of the archivans, the artistry of the Luminari, the strength of the Zephyrians, and the unique gifts of every species in this chamber. Admiral Chen stepped back from the podium and looked out at the greatest gathering of minds in galactic history. The Zephyrians called themselves Alpha because they thought strength meant domination. But they were wrong. Real strength means having the power to destroy your enemies and choosing instead to make them your friends. The chamber fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Then slowly species after species began to stand. The Luminari with their flowing ethereal forms, the stocky, practical Kalari, the scholarly Archivans with their multiple eyes gleaming with intelligence. Even the massive Zephyrians rose to their feet, their silver markings now glowing not with aggression, but with something new. Hope. Epilogue. 10 years later, Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Pioneer's Dream, watching as his mixed-species crew prepared for humanity's most ambitious project yet. Through the viewscreen, he could see the construction site that would soon become Gateway Station, a massive structure designed to launch expeditions beyond the galactic rim. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Kessi Andra, the Zephyrian tactical officer, "all construction crews report ready. The Luminari artists have finished the cultural sections, the Kalari engineers have certified all systems, and the Archivan researchers have loaded the knowledge databases." Webb smiled. 10 years ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. Now it was routine. The galaxy had learned that diversity wasn't just morally right, it was strategically superior. "Sir," interrupted Ensign Talwex, a young Zephyrian fresh from the academy, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." "Put it through." The image that appeared was of Admiral Chen, now elderly but still sharp-eyed, speaking from the Terran Council chambers. "Captain Webb, you are authorized to begin humanity's greatest adventure, the exploration of the space beyond our galaxy. You carry with you not just human hopes, but the dreams of every species in our civilization." She paused, looking directly into the camera with that same determined expression that had faced down the Zephyrian Empire a decade ago. "Remember what we learned in the war against the Zephyrians. We are strongest when we stand together. We are wisest when we listen to all voices. And we are most human when we choose cooperation over domination, understanding over fear." The transmission ended, and Captain Webb looked around his bridge at the faces. Human, Zephyrian, Luminari, Kalari, and a dozen other species all working toward the same goal. "You heard the Admiral," he said quietly. "Let's go explore the universe, together." As the Pioneer's dream engaged its drives and headed toward the galactic rim, Webb reflected on the incredible transformation that had occurred. The Zephyrians had thought they were the ultimate predators, the alpha species that would rule the galaxy forever. They were wrong. Humans had shown them something better than being alpha. They had shown them how to evolve. Not through domination, but through cooperation. Not through fear, but through understanding. Not by conquering the galaxy, but by inspiring it to become something greater than the sum of its parts. The Zephyrians had been obliterated from reality, not physically, but philosophically. The empire built on might and fear was gone forever, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization where every species contributed their unique strengths, where diversity was celebrated rather than crushed, where the strong protected the weak instead of exploiting them. Behind them, the galaxy hummed with activity. Former slave worlds were now thriving centers of art and science. The great Zephyrian warships had been converted into exploration vessels and mobile hospitals. Children of dozens of species played together in schools that taught not just facts, but the value of understanding different perspectives. It was, Captain Webb thought as the stars shifted around them, exactly what humanity had always been best at, taking an impossible situation and finding a way to make it work. The Zephyrians had called themselves Alpha until humans obliterated them from reality. But in the end, the humans had given them something far better than dominance. They had given them hope. The end. In the vastness of space, the greatest victory is not conquering your enemies, it's discovering that you never needed enemies in the first place. From the Terran Federation archives, documenting humanity's first contact with galactic civilization.